April 19, 1961. White House Situation Room, 2:13 a.m. President Kennedy sat in darkness, listening to a tape that changed everything. CIA Deputy Director Charles Cabell's voice was crystal clear. The president doesn't need to know the full scope. We tell him 1,400 exiles. We don't mention we're expecting U.S. military intervention. Once they're dying on the beach, he'll have no choice but to send Marines. He's young, inexperienced. He'll fold. Kennedy's hands trembled as he stopped the tape. This recording had been delivered anonymously 3 hours earlier, slipped under his secretary's door. Mr. President, they're lying to you about Cuba. The Bay of Pigs invasion would begin in 48 hours. Kennedy had just discovered the CIA was setting him up. Trap him into war, or take the blame for catastrophic failure. This betrayal would trigger a 3-year secret war between President and CIA. A war ending in Dallas. Part 1. The Inheritance. January 19. The trap is set. When Kennedy took office, he inherited a CIA operation planned under Eisenhower. 1,400 Cuban exiles would invade Cuba and overthrow Castro. CIA Director Allen Dulles presented it as foolproof. Clumsy or airstrikes destroy Castro's Air Force. Amphibious landing at Bay of Pigs. Popular uprising topples Castro. Total deniability appears entirely Cuban-led. 75% success rate. Kennedy approved with one condition: no direct U.S. military involvement. What Kennedy didn't know, the CIA never believed it could succeed without U.S. troops. The plan was to trap the president into full-scale war. Part 2. The Deception Revealed. April 19, 1961. The Anonymous Tapes. Over 48 hours, Kennedy listened to 6 secretly recorded CIA conversations. They revealed a conspiracy. Tape 1. March 11th. Cabell and Richard Bissell. The president is adamant about no U.S. Once men are dying on the beach, Kennedy faces a choice. Send Marines or watch 1,400 exiles die on television. He's a politician. He'll choose Marines. And if he doesn't, then it fails. Kennedy takes the blame, and we get a president who understands reality in 19. Either way, we win. Tape 2. March 18th. Allen Dulles. What if Kennedy discovers we've misrepresented intelligence? He won't. He's been in office 60 days. By the time he figures out we exaggerated the uprising probability, the invasion will be underway. Tape 3. April 4th. Bissell. The president reduced airstrikes to one wave, 48 hours before landing. This compromises the operation. We proceed anyway. If it fails because Kennedy restricted us, that's his failure, not ours. Kennedy realized the CIA was setting him up, either forced into war or blamed for design failure. Part 3. The Trap Springs. April 17th, 19. Everything fails. At 1:30 a.m., 1,400 exiles landed at Bay of Pigs. Within hours, catastrophe. Cron-era airstrikes failed. CIA provided wrong airfield locations. No popular uprising. CIA lied about support. Brigade trapped on beaches. Castro's forces, with air superiority, pinned them down. At 9 a.m., Cabell demanded Kennedy authorize U.S. military support. Mr. President, 1,400 men are dying. You must authorize support. Kennedy, who had spent the night listening to the tapes, understood exactly what was happening. General Cabell, I was told this would succeed without U.S. military. Now you say it will fail without it. Which means I was lied to. Mr. President, the situation has evolved. The situation hasn't evolved. This is exactly what you planned. You designed this to fail unless I committed U.S. forces. You set me up. Mr. President, if we don't act, those men will die. Those men are dying because the CIA sent them into a trap. I will not start World War III to cover up your incompetence. Kennedy refused intervention. The invasion collapsed within 72 hours. 114 killed, over 1,200 captured. The CIA began planning Kennedy's removal. Part 4. The secret recordings begin. May 1961. Building the evidence. Shaken by the betrayal, Kennedy installed a secret recording system, voice-activated microphones in Oval Office, manual recording in Cabinet Room, hidden dictaphone in desk, secure vault only Kennedy, Robert and Secretary Evelyn Lincoln could access. If they're going to lie to me, I'm going to have evidence. If they're planning to remove me, I'm going to leave a record. Over 30 months, Kennedy recorded 260 hours capturing, CIA continuing to mislead about Cuba, military pressuring Kennedy to invade, Cuban Missile Crisis negotiations that enraged the establishment, threats from his own advisors, the growing conspiracy leading to Dallas. The Bay of Pigs recordings became the foundation of what would be called the Omega File. Part 5. The CIA's Revenge. June 1961. Planning begins. Kennedy's intelligence source, Chess, penetrated CIA headquarters, providing reports of secret meetings. June 14, 1961. Dulles, the president's refusal to support the brigade was betrayal and dangerous weakness. We cannot allow this administration to continue appeasing communists. Bissell, The president is young, inexperienced, idealistic. He doesn't understand some decisions require moral compromise. Angleton, or we ensure the next president is more realistic about security needs. Harvey, are we discussing what I think? Dulles, we're discussing contingencies. If the president becomes a threat to national security, other arrangements may be necessary. Kennedy read this with rage and fear. Senior CIA officials were discussing his removal, possibly assassination, just 2 months after he'd refused their war. Part 6. The firing. September 1961. Kennedy strikes first. Kennedy forced resignations. Allen Dulles, September 27. Richard Bissell and Charles Cabell, February 1962. He was firing the 3 men who had deceived him and were now discussing his removal. Kennedy's September 26 meeting with Dulles. Allen, I need your resignation. Mr. President, I've served decades. You served your own interests. You lied about Bay of Pigs. You designed an operation that could only succeed if I started a war. And now you're discussing my removal. Resign, or I fire you and make the reasons public. Dulles stared, then said quietly, you're making a mistake. The agency won't forget this. Is that a threat? It's a prediction. You may be president, but we're permanent. We have long memories. Kennedy had won the battle, but started a war he couldn't win. Part 7. The Cuban Missile Crisis. October 1962. The breaking point. During the 13-day nuclear crisis, Kennedy's solution enraged the military. Negotiate Soviet missile removal. Promise never to invade Cuba. October 27th. The military demanded war. General LeMay, Mr. President, this is our chance. We can destroy Castro. We should invade immediately. JFK, General, Soviet troops are in Cuba. Invasion means war with the USSR. LeMay, we can win that war. JFK, at what cost? How many millions dead? LeMay, that's the price of defending freedom. JFK, that's the price of your pride. I'm not starting World War III over Cuba. Kennedy's response, I've seen war, General. Have you? I've watched men die. I won't start nuclear war because diplomacy offends you. The military left convinced Kennedy was weak, dangerous, and needed removal. Part 8. The Secret Deal. October 28, 1962. Kennedy's secret deal with Khrushchev included one provision that enraged CIA and military. The U.S. would never invade Cuba. Kennedy had promised to protect Castro's government. A CIA memo dated November 2, 1962. The president's agreement to guarantee Cuban sovereignty represents betrayal of American interests and the 1,400 exiles who died at Bay of Pigs. This administration is hostile to agency objectives. If the president won't defend American interests, alternative measures must be explored to ensure national security. Translation: the CIA would pursue regime change regardless of Kennedy's orders, and Kennedy himself was an obstacle to be removed. Part 9. The Connection to Dallas. August 1963. The link discovered. Kennedy's intelligence revealed CIA officers from Bay of Pigs operation were now coordinating with anti-Castro exiles, discussing removing Kennedy as obstacle to Cuban liberation. Names that would later connect to Dallas. David Ferry, CIA pilot, Bay of Pigs trainer. Guy Bannister, former FBI, working with CIA on Cuba. Clay Shaw, CIA businessman, anti-Castro connections. Bobby, the CIA has connected me to Castro. They believe I betrayed Cuban exiles at Bay of Pigs. They believe I protected Castro during missile crisis. They've decided I'm the problem. They're in contact with Cuban exiles who have training and weapons. They're planning to kill me and make it look like Castro did it. Kennedy began compiling the Omega file, evidence of CIA betrayal and conspiracy. The Bay of Pigs recordings were its foundation. Part 10. The Warnings. May-November 1963. Attempts to save him. 3 warnings Kennedy received but couldn't act on. May 1963. Anonymous letter from Bay of Pigs veteran. Mr. President, I was on the beach. I blamed you for years, but I've learned the operation was designed to force your hand. I'm warning you, the same men are discussing extreme measures. They're in contact with Cuban exiles. They're capable of anything. August 1963. Intelligence from Cuban exile source. Something big being planned against Kennedy by Bay of Pigs veterans. November 18th. Anonymous phone call. Tell Kennedy not to go to Dallas. Bay of Pigs people are waiting there. They're going to kill him for what he did. This is real. None were specific enough to prevent Dallas. Kennedy noted, if they're going to kill me, they'll find a way. Better to proceed and maintain surveillance. The Bay of Pigs comes full circle. When shots were fired in Dealey Plaza, the Bay of Pigs conspiracy completed its arc. The location: Texas, Johnson's territory, controlled security, the vulnerability, slow turn on Elm Street, perfect ambush, military precision. The shooters, multiple positions, CIA-trained operative coordination. The patsy, Oswald with both pro-anti-Castro connections, perfect misdirection. The narrative, within hours, pro-Castro communist identified, justifying Cuba invasion. In Kennedy's final moments, the Bay of Pigs conspiracy, that began April 1961, ended November. Part 12. Robert Kennedy knew. RFK's investigation. Within hours of JFK's death,
Robert told his press secretary. They killed him because of Cuba. The Bay of Pigs people. They never forgave him. Robert spent 1963-1968 gathering evidence. Built case showing Bay of Pigs was a trap. May 1968, Robert wrote, Jack was killed by the same people who lied about Bay of Pigs. They designed that operation to trap him. When he refused, they spent 3 years planning his murder. When I'm president, I'll release everything. 3 weeks later, Robert Kennedy was assassinated. The Bay of Pigs conspiracy claimed both Kennedy brothers. Kennedy's source provided secretly recorded Dulles conversations coordinating Kennedy's removal. June 15, 1962. Dick, the president thinks firing me ended my influence. He doesn't understand the agency is bigger than any director. My people are still operational. Kennedy has proven incapable of hard decisions. If he continues, he'll hand the hemisphere to communists. You think he'll win re-election in 64? I think he won't be a factor in 64. One way or another, we'll have a president who understands strength, not negotiation. September 3, 1962. Bay of Pigs veterans feel betrayed. They blame Kennedy. That's useful. Useful how? Men with training, motivation, and grievance are operational assets. If properly directed, they could solve problems official channels can't. March 17, 1963. The president is planning major agency reorganization after 64. He's talking about eliminating covert action. We can't allow him to win re-election. We need to act before November 64. What are you proposing? We have assets, Bay of Pigs veterans, organized crime contacts, a patsy with pro-Castro connections. We have motivation. He's destroying the agency. We have opportunity. Texas in November, LBJ's territory. And we have cover. Warren Commission members can ensure appropriate findings. You're talking about assassinating the president. I'm talking about protecting the United States from a president who's proven himself a threat. Call it what you want. I call it patriotism. These recordings were made 8 months before Dallas. They proved premeditation. Part 14, the 2024 release, October 22, 2024, The Full Truth. On the 61st anniversary, the complete Omega file was released, including all Bay of Pigs recordings. For the first time, the public could see the direct line from April 1961 to November 19. The evidence, Rowan's, Kennedy's recordings proving CIA deception, intelligence showing Bay of Pigs veterans in Dallas November 1963, CIA memos discussing executive action 1 week after Bay of Pigs, Dulles's conversations coordinating with Cuban exiles, financial records showing CIA payments, testimony from veterans confirming manipulation, historical consensus shifted, before, probably conspiracy, but we don't know who, after, Kennedy killed by CIA officers and Bay of Pigs veterans in revenge for refusing Cuba invasion. Headlines ran, Bay of Pigs deception led to Dallas assassination, CIA planned Kennedy murder from day he refused invasion, Cuban exiles manipulated by CIA into killing president. Before about Kennedy's final words, November 21, 19. Last recording on Bay of Pigs. I've been thinking about Bay of Pigs. That's where this started, where I learned the CIA doesn't work for the president, where I learned I couldn't trust my advisors, where I learned people in my government believe they can manipulate me into war. Bay of Pigs taught me the presidency is weaker than I thought, that there are permanent structures that transcend any administration, that those structures will sacrifice American lives to maintain their vision of policy. I refuse to be trapped at Bay of Pigs. I refuse to send Marines to save a CIA operation designed to fail. That refusal marked me as an enemy. Everything since, missile crisis, Vietnam, CIA reorganization, extensions of that original conflict. They wanted a Cold War warrior who'd start World War III over Cuba. I chose to be a peacemaker. That choice might cost my life. Bay of Pigs veterans blame me for their friends' deaths. CIA blames me for humiliation. Military blames me for weakness. But I was right. Invading Cuba in April 1961 would have been wrong. We could have stumbled into nuclear war. I made the right choice. If they kill me for it, at least history will know why. Bay of Pigs wasn't a failure. It was a test. Whether the president really commands or takes orders from agencies. I failed their test, but I passed my own. To whoever hears this, don't let them control you through fear. Don't let them trap you into wars you know are wrong. The presidency serves the people, not the permanent bureaucracy. Bay of Pigs was my line. I wouldn't cross it. They never forgave me, but I'd make the same choice again. 2 days later, Kennedy was dead.